Heyers, my name is Lee from Studio Craze, also known as Z Craze on Twitch, and this is my debut game called Courier Tale. It should be coming to Windows PC, possibly also Linux and Mac, so make sure you wishlist the game so that when it comes out you'll get a notification as to when it's out. Even if you are on Linux and Mac, it might be worth wishlisting, because if those versions come out later on, you'll still know that the game's around. What we're going to do today is do a bit of a tour of the demo, which is available on Steam right now. You can go download it right now. If you don't want any spoilers, maybe go download it now, play the demo, and then come back and watch this video. The demo is the prologue. It's the beginning of the game. It's about the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game, depending on your speed as far as how you play it. The full game is about 3 to 5 hours long, so it's a relatively short game, but that's the sort of game I want to make. It's the sort of games I like to play myself. I like a game that you can kind of complete in like one night or over a weekend. So the premise behind this game is that you've joined the gig economy as a courier for Tale Couriers. Explore, meet and chat with a cast of characters, complete deliveries for the company while doing jobs on the side in this pixel art adventure where this job is not everything you expected it to be. The email we see here at the start of the game kind of gives a bit of an insight into the character of Max, which you play as the player. Max has some bills that need to be paid and obviously needs a job, so they decided to give the gig economy a go. And they've been accepted as a courier for Tale Couriers, so that's what the email is all about. And the beginning of the game is literally going to Jerry's Ferries, which is a subsidiary of Tale Couriers. Go sign up to become a courier, get Max's uniform, and just signed up onto the Tale Couriers app. One of the first things you might notice with the visuals is that it's all grayscale at the moment in the beginning of the game, and grey is a massive theme from a visual standpoint for most of the game. All of the game features grey, however other locations feature other colours like blue, green or yellow. So each location has its own sort of theme to an extent, but at most there's 14 colours at one time being shown. So hopefully that gives Courier Tale a bit of a stylised look alongside its low resolution retro graphics, which are inspired by 8-bit and 16-bit graphics from the sort of Sega Mega Drive, Super Nintendo, Sega Master System, Nintendo Entertainment System era. But on a more modern influence side of things, it might not look like it, but the game is actually quite inspired visually by the indie game Celeste, which has really chunky pixel art. And that's what I wanted with this game, was low resolution, chunky pixel art. A real minimalist sort of style, so a lot of flat color, not too much detail. In fact, in the polishing phase right now with the game, I'm actually been removing details sometimes to kind of make it more consistent. The game is obviously visually inspired by top-down pixel art games, normally sort of top-down RPGs. You don't see games like this style always in this sort of top-down perspective, especially because the gameplay feels a bit more like a point-and-click adventure in many ways, which are normally 2D side-scrolling sort of games, sometimes 3D, but rarely are they top-down sort of games. So I think this kind of mashes up two different genres a bit there. It might look more like an RPG, like a top-down 2D RPG, but it's more of an adventure game. It's kind of taking influences from interactive fiction, walking simulators, and point-and-click adventures. And speaking of game influences, I guess with point-and-click adventures, I found more and more LucasArts point-and-click adventure games have been a massive influence on this game, in particular games like Monkey Island, Day of the Tentacle, and Sam & Max. I think a lot of the dialogue delivery and style and humour is quite like those sort of games. Of course, humour is subjective, so whether or not you'll find the dialogue funny or not is up to you, I guess, but definitely some people have found some of the dialogue funny. Another big influence on the game was a game called Always Sometimes Monsters, which has a lot of similarities to this. It's a top-down sort of adventure game, it's pixel art, and definitely a major influence for this game for sure. Two other games that were major influences for this game were Night in the Woods and A Short Hike. Both of them feature animal characters. A Short Hike is this small little island exploration game which has a lot of similarities in some ways to Courier Tale in that respect, while Night in the Woods is very dialogue based. Both of them have like speech bubbles for dialogue and that, which that's what I like to have in games, make it more seem like a comic book, like a live action comic book. I recently played Frog Detective, which is another game from Australia. I'm from Australia myself, so it's always good to see Australian games doing really well. And I found a lot of the style of that game, even though that and in 3D, was quite similar to Courier Tale in that it was kind of walking and talking sort of game, going and picking up items from one person and giving them to another. It's a very similar gameplay style to Courier Tale, and also some of the offbeat, weird humour and dialogue is quite similar as well. Another visual influence and just sort of story influence has been Spirited Away and Cat Returns by Studio Ghibli, and just Studio Ghibli films in general. I think when I first started working on this game, I was thinking about making all the characters human, but as you all notice by the end of the demo, that there seems to be these animal people around. And I think one of the main inspirations for that was movies like Spirited Away and Cat Returns, which do have these animal people in these stories. So while they might have a contemporary feel to them, they actually have this fantasy element as well. For quite a lot of people looking at Courier Tale, they might think it's a bit similar to something like Undertale or Earthbound, especially seeing the name Tale is in the word, which I didn't even think about until after I'd called the game Courier Tale. I wouldn't say those two games were influences for the game, but I think if you do like Undertale or Earthbound, you could like this game as long as you don't mind not having combat in the game. The game's got a sort of chill, cozy, wholesome sort of feel to it. There's still a bit of an edge to it, you know, the characters are pretty sarcastic, and there's some serious topics within the game, but nothing too heavy-handed really. The main thing about it is that there's no combat, which is something that I appreciate myself. I do like games with combat in them, but this game is purely a story-based game. So it's all about walking and talking, as I say often about this game. So you're walking around and you're talking to people. There's kind of three pillars to the game: exploration, conversation, and occupation. So you explore the world, you have conversations with characters, and then you also participate in your occupation as a courier, doing jobs for Tale couriers, but also side jobs as well. So there's jobs you do for Tale couriers, and you can do them in any order. You don't have to do them in a specific order, you can do them in the order that you want. And you do those jobs to earn currency so that you can keep traveling through the game. The currency is different in different locations. It's kind of a satire on cryptocurrency. You also can pick up side jobs. The side jobs will be from talking to different characters in the world, and they might have something they'd like you to do for them, and you can decide if you want to do those side jobs or not. You don't have to do the side jobs. A lot of the game is optional and kind of gives you the option to do it in the order you want, or whether you want to do things like side jobs or not. You don't have to talk to all the characters. You can just kind of blaze your way through it, and if you do, then you're probably going to be more on the 3-hour side of gameplay, maybe even less. But if you want to do everything, speak to everyone, explore everything, try and find everything, then you could be more closer to the 5-hour mark to complete the full game. The game might have multiple endings, so depending on what you do within the game, you may get a different ending. Speaking of finding things, you might find collector cards throughout the world, so that's a bit of a collectible. And also, when you complete side jobs for characters, you'll also earn collector cards. The game is what I call a semi-open world. I don't like using the term open world completely because that makes you think of big games like Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto or something. Courier Tale is a much smaller game than that, but it is technically kind of like an open world in the respect that you can walk around and explore most of the areas and there's very little gating. The start of the game, which is where the demo is based, is a much more linear process, and that's why the demo is based on that part, because it's much harder to make a demo based around an open world without putting a bunch of invisible barriers up. So hopefully that assists with the whole sort of optional and freedom sort of and exploration side of Courier Tale. The soundtrack was challenging because normally I make music that doesn't quite suit the tone of this game. So I ended up actually going back to my hip-hop roots a bit, and even though I didn't used to do sample-based production, I used to make everything with synthesizers, I went back to the roots of hip-hop, which is sample-based production, and took that into approaching it from a sort of lo-fi hip-hop or chill-hop sort of approach. So that's what the soundtrack is for Courier Tale. And I think it suits the vibe of the game while also kind of paying sort of homage to my hip-hop roots as well. In the demo you meet various characters such as Jerry, Mary and Gary. There are over 50 characters at this point, there may be even more by the time the game launches. And because the game is so focused around talking to characters, obviously there's quite a lot of different sorts of characters in the game. So that's Courier Tale. If you dig what you see, Go check out the demo on Steam, download it, it's a free demo. It's only short, only about 10 to 15 minutes, give you a taste of what the game feels like to play. If you dig what you play or see, wishlist it on Steam. You can also follow Courier Tale on social media such as Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Just look for @CourierTale for the handle. And also you can go to couriertale.com for more info about the game. Hope you enjoyed this tour of the demo for Courier Tale, and I hope you enjoy the full game. Till next time, check ya.